You ever do that? Jump straight to a solution only to realize way too late that you were solving the completely wrong problem? We're going to dive into a powerful way of thinking that helps you avoid that exact trap. It's all about learning to think like an architect.
To really get our heads around this, let me start with a quick story. So let's meet John. John's been feeling a little off. Some heart palpitations, things just don't feel right, and he's starting to get worried.
So what does he do? Well, what we all do, right? He dives headfirst down the rabbit hole of the internet. And after a couple of weeks clicking through medical sites and forums, he matches up his symptoms and bam, he's convinced. He knows exactly what he's got.
So he takes all his research, walks right into the doctor's office, and he doesn't ask for an opinion. No, he lays it all out and says, "Doc, look, I've figured it out. I just need you to write me a prescription for this specific drug."
And here is where the story takes a turn. The doctor, in a pretty shocking move, just looks at John's pile of printouts and says, "Okay." He just takes him at his word, skips the whole diagnosis, no tests, no expert questions, nothing. He just writes the prescription John asked for.
And the result? Well, it's tragic. Turns out, John was completely wrong about his self-diagnosis. And worse, he was allergic to the very medicine he was so sure he needed. The solution killed him.
So this leaves us with a really critical question, right? Who's at fault here? Is it John, the patient, who was just scared and trying to make sense of things? Or is it the doctor, the expert, whose entire job was to diagnose the real problem before ever prescribing a fix?
Okay, I know that story is an extreme medical analogy, but that core mistake, that professional malpractice of prescribing without diagnosing, that is something that happens every single day in the world of business, tech, and design.
And there's a name for it, designer's malpractice. It's this incredibly common and frankly expensive habit of jumping straight to the solution. Let's build a new app, or we need a website redesign, before anyone has taken a single second to properly diagnose the actual business problem.
And this, right here, this is the fundamental shift in thinking. A traditional designer might get stuck on the what and the how. What are we building? Does it look cool? But a strategist, someone who thinks like an architect, they are obsessed with the why. Does this thing actually work? Why are we even building this in the first place?
And make no mistake, this isn't some academic debate. When you jump the gun like this, there are real painful costs. You end up with technical debt, systems that don't talk to each other, you waste unbelievable amounts of money and time, and more often than not, you're forced to just scrap it and rewrite the whole thing a year later.
So if prescribing a solution without diagnosing is the disease, what's the cure? Well, it starts by changing our role entirely. We have to stop thinking of ourselves as just problem solvers and start becoming expert problem seekers. The real value is created long before anyone starts talking about solutions. The key skill here is something called integrative curiosity. Now, that sounds fancy, but it just means this. It's the ability to take a massive pile of information, and a lot of it will be conflicting, like what the client wants versus the budget versus what users actually need, and weave it all together into a single elegant path forward.
So how do you actually do this? You start by asking questions that just shatter old assumptions, like this one. What if money were no object? Look, the point isn't to get a blank check. The point is to get everyone to admit what they really value when you take the constraints away for just a second.
Or you can ask a question that redefines the entire problem. For instance, a team was asked to solve an airport's parking problem, but one person asked, why not build a bus system instead? See? That instantly changed the problem from where do we store more cars to how do we get people to the terminal? Totally different game.
And sometimes the most powerful question is the one that sounds the dumbest. Asking that really basic question that everyone thinks they know the answer to, it forces the whole room to go back to square one. And often, that's when you discover a huge flawed assumption your entire project is built on. This is actually a great little exercise you can do to get good at this. It's called the question burst. It's so simple. You set a timer for just 4 minutes, and you and your team do nothing but brainstorm questions about the problem. That's it. No answers allowed, no justifying your question. It's amazing how fast this forces you to see a problem from a dozen new angles.
So the whole process, the whole mindset, it really boils down to this 3-step mantra. First, you ask. You ask questions until you've diagnosed the real problem. Then you synthesize all those complex, messy needs. And only then, at the very end of the line, do you finally earn the right to create the solution. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this look like out in the wild?
Let's take a look at how this obsession with asking the right questions can turn a totally impossible challenge into something that's not just functional, but beautiful.
Okay, check this out. At Yale University, a team of architects was handed this, just an absolute nightmare of a project. The site was this horrible, landlocked space behind 5 other buildings. They had to build a new structure on top of an old lab, somehow drop a skylight through it to light up another lab 3 floors down, add new ramps for accessibility, and, hide all the ugly mechanical equipment.
Now, the typical approach would have created some clunky, awkward Frankenstein's monster of a building, right? But because the architects deeply understood and synthesized every single one of those constraints, they came up with something just breathtakingly simple. One perfect, self-contained glass oval that solved every single problem at once, elegantly.
And that Yale example, it reveals the true purpose of thinking like an architect. And here's a spoiler. It's not about being the smartest person in the room who has all the brilliant ideas. It's this right here. It's a quote from Gregor Hope. The real goal isn't to be the genius who dictates the answer. The real goal is to make the entire team smarter. It's about giving them the frameworks and the clarity so that they can make better, more informed decisions all on their own.
Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine driving a car. A bad approach is to just put up guardrails, hard barriers to stop you from having a total catastrophe. But a great architectural approach, that's like lane assist. It gives you gentle, constant feedback that helps you stay centered, making it way less likely you're ever going to hit the guardrail in the first place. In the end, this is so much more than just a philosophy for building things. It's a powerful toolkit for dealing with any kind of complex problem. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. What's a big challenge you're facing right now? And what if the breakthrough you're looking for isn't an answer at all, but just finding the right question?